got on top, tried to finish the fight, found out how hurt Charles really was. There's only one way to find out. You got to dive in. Same thing with me. Of course, you have to respect the jiu-jitsu, and I'm confident I have good jiu-jitsu. I just respected his too much. I tried to get a stalemate. I didn't engage and use my jiu-jitsu offensively. I should have created space. I should have attempted submissions and used that to create space and get back up.
Or Oliveira was just better. He was just too good. Dustin Poirier had an honest interview with Teddy Atlas, and I recommend everybody to see the full interview. Make sure to check that out on their channel. I'm gonna have the link in the description. But for some reason, when it comes to judging Oliveira's skills and judging him as a fighter entirely, the lightweights either cannot grasp it or they do not want to grasp how good this guy has become, because not only do they talk about what they can do to him, what they could have done to him after losing to him, and underestimating how good he is, but they often talk about his quitter mentality. It's almost like they're shocked that the guy's not quitting in fights. And it has to be because a lot of fighters believe if you're a quitter, you're always going to be a quitter. You're a quitter at heart. But Oliveira has challenged that entire narrative, that whole mindset. And that may be actually the origin of issues that the contenders have with Oliveira. And this could be the reason why they don't want to think Oliveira is as good as he is. And it continues even after coming off losses. Even Michael Chandler was saying that Justin Gaethje should have been able to mentally break Oliveira and Dustin should beat him through his pressure. He did change his tune after he saw Oliveira beat Poirier, then he started to understand how good Oliveira is. Dustin Poirier now is undermining Oliveira's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Maybe it's not what he intended, but that's exactly what he's doing. He said he could have approached it in a completely different manner on the ground and beat Oliveira down there. He has a faulty perspective on how good it actually is. I mean, the guy didn't have to take him to the ground and he submitted him. And Dustin's saying that he should have got on top of Oliveira when he dropped him and tried to make something work, and Justin Gaethje should have done the same. Well, certainly Justin Gaethje definitely should not even be touching the canvas with his hand if he's fighting Oliveira. It doesn't even matter. I mean, even if they did that in their fights, even if Dustin Poirier and Gaethje went after Oliveira on the ground and got submitted, which most likely would have happened, Dustin would have said, I shouldn't have went to the ground with him. I chased him down there when I shouldn't have. I should have respected Oliveira's jiu-jitsu even more. Oliveira cannot win with the criticism of his opponents, even the guys that he beat, and he will continue to be an underdog moving forward, or at least underrated moving forward. You have Nate Diaz posting about Oliveira, and then you have Khabib and Islam also saying the same kind of thing. Khabib said that Islam's gonna ride Oliveira like a horse. He said that his grappling does not compare to Islam's. We're gonna have to see, man. I mean, if he goes and submits Islam Makhachev, the whole division is gonna probably have to get out of their faulty perspective on Oliveira's skills to be able to understand it and engage it. They don't have an understanding of how good Oliveira is. Instead of creating excuses as to why they lost, I understand that's what fighters have to do for themselves sometimes to get back into the right mental state after a loss. They should acknowledge how good this guy actually is. Most of the ways that you would approach the grappling with Oliveira would result in you losing at least exchanges. That's when the fighters in this weight class are going to progress, because instead of saying, oh man, he was so good there, I gotta address this, I gotta get better at this and that, I actually learned some things fighting Oliveira on the ground, I'm gonna use that moving forward. Instead of a positive mindset, they're more looking at it as, it's not that Oliveira's that good, it's just I made that mistake. I shouldn't have went to the ground. If I did it this way, the complete opposite approach, then I would have been able to get the victory. This kind of mindset is not going to progress necessarily their skills, but it's going to change their approach and mindset moving forward. Because here's the thing. Fighters have chased Oliveira on the ground or attacked him off his back, as Dustin said. Dustin said, I should have attacked him off my back in the second round instead of just sitting there. Well, we've seen this happen to other guys. Chandler chased Oliveira to the ground when he dropped him and got nothing done. He hit him a couple times before Oliveira got into his guard. But most of the punches that he was throwing were missing. He was getting tied up, and Chandler is a great grappler able to get out of there. And you can argue Oliveira was more hurt against Chandler than he was with Gaethje and Dustin. With Gaethje and Dustin, actually, Oliveira made an adjustment from the Chandler fight. When he got dropped, he went straight into his guard. He fell back, but against Michael Chandler, he went down to reach in for the legs, and that's what cost him a couple more blows to the head. So actually, Oliveira is the one that is fixing things. He's actually the one that's learning between fights. He knows now, if I get hit and I get hurt, I am not going to reach in for takedowns. I'm going to just get on my back. I saw the way that Chandler was able to pull away from it and land some shots on me. And I learned that when I did get on my back, that Chandler didn't really have much for me there, and he tried. And Justin Gaethje has nowhere near the jiu-jitsu that Michael Chandler does. So for sure, if anybody's going to chase Oliveira to the ground after hurting him, it's not Justin Gaethje. He would have got submitted quickly. Dustin could have probably put up a fight a little bit, but he would find himself kind of in no man's land with Oliveira's guard game. Now look at Tony Ferguson for an example. Tony Ferguson was on the bottom and he was attacking Oliveira. He was going for things. Tony was attacking Oliveira off his back, and look how crazy this is. This is why you do not want to attack Oliveira too much when you're on the bottom. As soon as Tony threw one elbow, he went to throw in an elbow when he was at half guard on bottom, and off of that, Oliveira was able to eventually transition into full mount. Because Tony threw an elbow, that's how good Oliveira is on the ground. Because of the elbow, Tony created an opening down the center on himself, and Oliveira hit him with almost a 12-6, and off of that, because of the blowback of the shot, he had an opening to reach in and grab a headlock. So now he is tight with Tony Ferguson, body to body, and has a clear position to get out of the half guard into side control. Tony, thinking that Oliveira was going to settle into side control, mid-transition, he goes right into full mount, catching Tony off guard. And from there, Oliveira was able to get the armbar pretty easily as he threw in an elbow, which naturally creates a rotation into an armbar angle. And while Oliveira's throwing that elbow, he's naturally posturing up, causing Tony to extend, try to reach around and grab Oliveira's head and bring him down. But by extending his arm, he gives the opening for the armbar. Just seeing this, there is nothing Dustin could have done on the bottom against Oliveira. There are levels to this, and that's what these guys have to understand about certain things. They cannot give in to their ego and their pride, thinking that Oliveira is actually not as good on the ground as a lot of people say that he is. And they want to prove it. But by trying to prove it, you almost get your arm snapped. And even Tony Ferguson after the fight, remember when he was saying that he was making Oliveira quit? Like, the logic against this guy from his opponents is insane. Just these minor actions of the opponent on the bottom gets him in such bad positions. It's crazy. Tony throwing an elbow caused a full mount. Him extending forward with his arm caused him getting an armbar instantly because he wanted to break the posture. And Tony just kept attacking off his back and getting hit with ground and pound shots, almost got caught in another armbar. This is why you don't want to do too much on the bottom unless you're on that level. And I don't think Dustin is, man. Dustin's a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist, but so was Tony Ferguson. And stemming off the Kevin Lee fight, the way that was going down, besides there was one good moment from Kevin Lee where he was able to control Oliveira for like a minute and 40 seconds without really doing anything on top. So he was throwing some hammer shots here and there, but had no opening at all to safely go for a real attack on Oliveira. So imagine, if guys can't even do anything while they're on top of him, how could they do anything when they're under him? And Oliveira's top game is probably even better than his bottom game. The logic is just not there, man. Charles Oliveira's opponents and the rest of the contenders of the weight class have to understand the reality of Oliveira's grappling to understand how to engage it. The only fighter that came to the realization of how good Oliveira was Kevin Lee, and Kevin Lee said mid-fight, midway through the second round specifically, he said he knew how good Oliveira was. He said that he knew that Oliveira was the best in the division, and before the fight, he admitted that he underestimated him. He said that he did not believe that Oliveira was championship level, but in the fight, he knew Oliveira was the best. He gave no qualms as to what he did, the mistakes he made as an approach other than underestimating Oliveira. Credit to Kevin Lee, man, for keeping it more real than the rest of the weight class, which is kind of crazy when Kevin Lee's the logical one. The rest of the guys, it seems like they can't believe Oliveira beat them.